It is very misunderstood. It's probably the most stigmatised against disorder. In some sense, because it's about cognition, it's about perception, it's about belief, it's almost one of the most human disorders that exists. It's kind of at the core of being a human being.
The thing is, it's not a band.
Well, what is it then?
To be honest with you, it's probably more to do with the fact that it's rehabilitation for me, and I'm using music as some type of therapy. What's the most amazing thing about the brain?
God, there's so much, I think. I suppose the most amazing thing about it, though, is...
Jones invited me to go up and do a little 5-minute speech thing at St Nicholas's Hospital, which is in Newcastle, which is an old Victorian mental health asylum. I think it's when it was built. So I started off with the usual sort of mental health gag, which is firstly I'd like to thank my care manager, my consultant psychiatrist, and diazepam for making it possible for me to speak with you today. My yesterdays have been very difficult. In my darkest days, my stability could only be measured by the thickness of the ice that I skated upon. My view of bipolar is it's an enigma wrapped up in a complex riddle. And then I went on and I developed this thing that I tend to do, and it's called the bipolar cliche. Bipolar is a life-threatening illness. Put it this way, if you spill the beans, you open a whole can of worms. How can you let sleeping dogs lie when you let the cat out of the bag? Bring in a new broom, and if you're not careful, you'll find you've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. Change horses in the middle of the stream, and the next thing you know, you're up the creek without a paddle. The balloon goes up, it hits you for 6, in fact an own goal. Then you end up talking in cliches till the cows come home.
Well, I've always been interested in the brain. After my medical training, it just so happened that techniques were becoming available where we could look into people's brains while they were thinking or imagining things or seeing things, or indeed while they were being ill. And that just fascinated me to be able to get a glimpse with neuroimaging of people's working brains.
Do you think it will ever be possible to diagnose depression by brain scanning?
Yes. People are trying this at the moment with, what's sort of been globally labelled as brain reading.
Right.
So,
is that like horse whispering?
You are at ground floor.
It's a very interesting development, and people are reporting stunning results in terms of using these brain images together with other measures to determine whether someone is in a certain diagnostic group, or whether someone's going to respond to treatment or not. But it's very, very early days.
The brain scan thing was done at a time when I'd had a number of bad days, and you said to me about the idea of, well, what happens if they find something? And me being me said, well, I'd want to know. The normal way I deal with things is bravado first and think later. And it dawned on me what that might mean as I was going into the scanner. Well, oh, fuck. Well, what if they do find something?
It's all pockets are empty.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Then we don't have to. So do you want to?
The process of actually lying on a slab made me feel a bit like I was being laid out in a morgue. I found that a bit weird. What spooked me even more was how claustrophobic it was inside the scanner. The only way I could deal with it was to close my eyes and try and get through it because I didn't know what to expect. To be honest with you, I was terrified.
That is what I believe is your first ever brain scan, Twink.
yeah.
Yes. So we scanned your brain from sort of top to bottom, and we can just sort of travel through it. And the, I suppose, most remarkable thing is, at some level, is that we're not actually seeing much in terms of, I mean, we're seeing essentially what looks like a normal brain. And that is just a general feature with patients with a mental illness, opposed to, say, a neurological illness, that mostly on a normal brain scan you're not seeing much or any abnormality. So one hope is, if we link this in with the genetics, to have more refined measures.
Yeah.
So by subgrouping patients, not take everyone together who suffers from bipolar disorder, but take the carriers of particular risk genes that people like Nick Craddock might identify in their research, we may be able to sort of get more refined groups and improve our findings.
Right.
And at the same time, we'll help them discover what the genes they find actually do to the brain.
When I saw the scan, I was pleased that it looked the same as everybody else's scan. So it wasn't abnormal in that sense. What I found difficult to comprehend was the fact that it was like a 3D scan. You could slice it and you could take a slice of the brain and look at it very, very closely. I'm perhaps underwhelmed in the sense that I thought we knew more about the brain. So this is like a 3D model, is that right?
In a way, yes, that's right. So we've
So you can turn it around, or you can take an individual slice.
That's right.
Where's
Movements.
memory?
Well, memory is in the hippocampus, which is
Right.
here.
Okay.
This is your. Hang on.
Where's creativity in the brain?
There's no answer to that. And
It must be somewhere.
Well, it must be somewhere, but it's almost certainly not going to be, in a particular area. So the more complex the functions get, the more distributed they are across the brain.
What does this mean for other bipolar sufferers? What does it mean for anybody with a mental ill health?
Yes.
So, to have it done is great, but it's more the realization that the brain is so complex. 100 billion neurons. It only takes a few neurons to have a problem with that has a ramification over the rest of the 100 billion neurons. I mean, where do you start? There just seems to be so many unanswered questions about an organ that is your primary organ in your body. And we don't know anything about it, really. We're merely scratching the surface. There's so many more questions I've got. I don't know what I was expecting.
But perhaps,
it's fairly mind-blowing stuff.
yeah.
I guess it'd be like X-raying, you know, that type of thing where years ago you couldn't see a broken bone.
Yes.
With photography, you're capturing an image and you're sort of encapsulating that in time.
Mhm.
But every time I ask a question and get an answer, your brain's processing that answer, which means my experience of prior to going into the scanner is different now.
Yes.
Because I've seen a snapshot
Yes.
of my brain.
Which one's which? Which one's the real Twink?
I don't think even I've worked out that one. I've been trying for 50 years to work out who I am. Still haven't quite got the answer.
Worry man, sing worry song. It takes worry man, sing worry song. I'm worried now, I won't be worried long. I'm worried now, I won't be worried long. I'm worried now, but I won't be worried long.
We'll just repeat. If we cock up, we'll do another one. And then we'll always end on the 3.
From the beginning.
Okay, Barry, on film.
Barry.
Barry, what do you think?
We need your help.
Oh, I think you're great.
Oh, thanks, Mark.
So we won't embarrass ourselves?
Totally not.
No?
Totally not.
Well, there's a spectrum of illness that mood disorder that comes on after childbirth. But what we're talking about with postpartum psychosis is the very severe end of the spectrum. Women who become incredibly ill following childbirth, and they get probably illnesses that are some of the most severe illnesses that we see in psychiatry.
You know, I had these slightly scary hallucinations where I remember my brother gave me this brown teddy bear, and I just kept sort of seeing it all over the place in strange places. Maybe that was in some way my subconscious kind of warning me, you know, be careful, you could do something silly here.
My imagination of the gig, the amount of emotional investment I'm putting into the 28th of March is what you would expect Oasis to be emotionally committed to at Nebworth. It's that huge a gig for me.